In Venezuela, the second and last day of the colloquium for the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Pichincha continues with the exchange of papers for the analysis of the historical date and the current geopolitical situation of the Latin American peoples. The people and government of Bolivia commemorate on Tuesday the National Day Against Racism and all forms of discrimination and celebrates the 213th anniversary of Chuquisaca's independence. The Russian Minister of Defense assured that the objectives of the operation in Ukraine will be met despite the sanctions and the West's support to Kyiv. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Diego Martin, from the TeleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, the second and last day of the colloquium for the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Pichincha continues with the exchange of papers for the analysis of the historical date and the current geopolitical situation of the Latin American peoples. The event, which began on Monday, May 23rd at the Municipal Theater of Caracas, counts with the participation of speakers from Mexico, Ecuador, Colombia, Bolivia, and Cuba. The purpose of the event is to promote the awareness of the Latin American peoples in the midst of the geopolitical changes that the continent experiences. On the occasion of the commemoration this Tuesday, the act of raising the national flag and the floral offering was carried to the sarcophagus of the father of the nation, Simón Bolívar. Independence battle took place on May 24, 1822, on the slopes of the Pichincha volcano in Quito, where for the first time forces from Guayaquil, Bolivia, and Chile participated together with the Venezuelans, a key episode in the liberation campaign of the South against the Spanish Empire. And on Twitter, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro posted together with an emotional video on the date, "I send my hug to the brotherly people of Ecuador on the bicentennial of the Battle of Pichincha, a feat that invites us to reflect on what we can achieve with unity. The central objective is the freedom, sovereignty, and independence of our peoples. Long live Sucre." The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, denounced the new attacks against refineries and the national electrical system. The executive warned that these events are part of the plans of the government of Iván Duque to destabilize the country from Colombia. During a meeting with the PSUV national leadership and the regional and local executive authorities, President Maduro accused the government of Colombia of being behind the attack on the Paraguayan refinery complex of the PDVSA State Oil Company in the Falcón state, as well as against the Palito refinery in the Guri hydroelectric complex, registered in the last 72 hours. The head of state pointed out that sectors of the Venezuelan right orchestrate terrorist actions under the guidelines of President Iván Duque from Colombia.
Today, the Paraguayan refinery complex, which suffered a terrorist attack yesterday, fortunately, the security measures allowed to control the terrorist attack against the Paraguayan refinery complex. On Saturday night, the refinery of El Palito has also received attack to its electrical system, the terrorist attack as well. The refineries are also being subjected to attacks by infiltrated enemies, hidden enemies to harm our refinery complexes, to harm our people. Behind this is the right wing. I denounce it. The wild right wing. The right wing that sells its nation. Behind this are the plans of Iván Duque, who is crazy and wounded, spreading his hate against Venezuela. I take this opportunity to inform that the Guri hydroelectric complex also received 2 attacks to its operating system.
In Brazil, the alliance of parties backing the pre-candidacy of former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has warned about the dissemination of fake news as well as disinformation and alleged violence during the general elections that will be held in October. At a meeting in Sao Paulo with leaders of political organizations that make up the movement behind former President Lula da Silva, keynote speaker Gleisi Hoffmann, member of the Workers' Party, said the attitude of President Jair Bolsonaro could judicialize the campaign. That's why she said this campaign needs a strong preparation, and she also said that everything that may keep coming from current President Bolsonaro will continue to be a lie. Panama would like to see an inclusive call for the 9th edition of the Summit of the Americas, an event from which Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba have been excluded. Panama's Foreign Affairs Minister Erika Moines said she hopes this upcoming summit will include all the countries in the Americas, as was the case back in 2015. She recalled that on that edition, 35 countries from Latin America attended, including Cuba. It was Cuba's first time at an event like that, and it left a memorable impression. That's why Panama supports the inclusion of Cuba in the event. Many reactions have been prompted at the international level given recent publications about Haiti and the payment of the debt to which this nation was subjected by France in exchange for its freedom. A U.S. newspaper also claims that the overthrowing of the only president who has protested this atrocity is linked to the act. Jean-Bertrand Aristide, during 2003, made this questioning one of his most important claims. According to the New York Times, Haiti had to pay for its freedom an amount between $21 and $115 billion. This would imply the equivalent of 8 times of the country's gross domestic product in 2020. Economists claim that the payments demanded by France deprived the Haitian economy of vital resources for its development. In addition to the 1914 plunder, the United States emptied the gold from the coffers of Haiti's national bank to take direct control of its finances. Thierry Boucard, the French ambassador to Port-au-Prince in 2003, claimed that there was some connection between the overthrowing of Aristide and his demands for the debt restitution. On Monday, the President of the United States, Joseph Biden, made official the designation of Colombia as its non-NATO ally, that is to say, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, after Congress gave the green light to the request of the executive. 1 month after the White House sent the formal request to the President of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, the South American nation became part of the group of 17 countries in the world and the third in Latin America to be an outside ally of NATO. Colombia's entry as an external country to the Atlantic Alliance allows it to access to American weapons materials as well as access to loans from this country with which it can improve its warfare and research capacity in this area. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hi, and welcome back to From the South. The people and government of Bolivia commemorate on Tuesday the National Day Against Racism and all forms of discrimination, in addition to celebrating the 213th anniversary of Chuquisaca's independence. Authorities reported on Tuesday that the Ministry of Culture called on the population to participate in a march starting at the Isabel la Católica Square to San Francisco in the center of La Paz at 8 a.m. local time. The march had high citizen participation and showed their position against all acts of racial discrimination. Likewise, the Municipal Council of Sucre and the Departmental Legislative Assembly of Chuquisaca, with the presence of President Luis Arce, held the homage to the 213th anniversary of independence. During the speech, the head of state announced the upcoming construction of a Chaco plant that will process chili, carob, peanuts, and sesame. Now, let's step outside and head again to Colombia, because on Monday, the president of the National Electoral Council, Cesar Abreu Mendez, denied the registry's statements about the selection of the firm for the international audit regarding the electoral software. Alexander Vega Rocha had assured hours earlier that the process had been completed, but the president of Colombia's highest electoral body reiterated that the firm that will carry out the international audit has not yet been selected or contracted. He added that so far only an offer from Datasys has been received, but no agreement has been closed on the matter. After clarifying the current status of the process, the president of the council recalled that it is precisely Alexander Vega Rocha, as head of the National Registry, who will sign the contract once the different stages have been completed in accordance with the current regulations.
I would like to inform that to date, no international audit for the presidential election has been selected or contracted, as has been reported by different media and social networks. An offer was received from Datasys, And in this moment, the technical committee is studying the experience and suitability of the firm, in addition to verifying compliance with requirements, as well as the documentation presented to see whether they adjust to Colombia's public contracting policy.
In Colombia, the third and last debate between candidates for the presidency of the nation began as part of the closing of the campaign that will end with the elections on May 29th. Three of the four candidates, Gustavo Petro, Sergio Fajardo, and Federico Gutierrez, attended the public meeting in which they exchanged ideas and government proposals. For his part, the candidate, Rodolfo Hernandez, did not attend the meeting for personal reasons. Each candidate had 2 minutes to answer questions, while the other participants had to do so in 1 minute. The first question was for Gustavo Petro, candidate for Pacto Histórico, who ratified the risk that the elections would have if the National Registry were to be suspended.
In fact, the Administrative Court of Cundinamarca ruled in a decision that it was the Attorney General who could suspend the National Registrar. That was 3 days ago. If the National Registrar is suspended in the days before the elections, he is practically left without institutional leadership. We were warned that this was going to happen on Tuesday, so we gave the alert. The suspension of the registrar would practically interrupt the institutional management of the electoral process.
Similarly, Gustavo Petro detailed the doubts they have about the counting system, given that they have not been able to carry out the software audit.
Until today, it has not been possible to carry out a technical audit of a software that goes from a table where the votes are counted to the registrar's office, which is held by a private company with clandestine buildings, called Thomas and Grigg. If the software has malicious algorithms, as the justice said in the sentence against NIDA, we have serious doubts about what could happen. We have not been able to do the technical audit of the actual software which goes between the table, the pre-count, and the scrutiny.
During the televised debate of the presidential candidates, the contender for the Equipo for Colombia party, Federico Gutierrez, invited other candidates to confront the violence that the country experiences.
When I win the presidency, we're going to unite Colombia, and I am going to invite you. I am going to invite Gustavo so that we can talk. I'm going to invite the other candidates. I am going to invite them so that we can talk and build a country. But Colombia can no longer be incited to violence or believe that one is the only one who can take the country forward. I am going to need a lot of sectors to take Colombia forward.
In this context, Federico Gutierrez questioned the integrity of the national electoral system.
What all candidates, but above all the country, need is that we are giving guarantees for fair elections, that we have elections marked by legality, that there are many things that have not been clarified since the debate and since everything that happened during the legislative elections.
Meanwhile, the presidential candidate for the Centro Esperanza coalition, Sergio Fajardo, spoke about the distrust of the Colombian people towards the control entities and the corruption in the different institutions of the country.
I have no confidence at all. There has been no clear explanation from the registrar as to what happened, and it is part of this policy which is hidden in traps that have not allowed the control bodies to be independent of the executive branch, and has led to many cases of corruption and deinstitutionalization. And this word is very important because in Colombia, trust has been lost, and this Colombia of ours today is a Colombia that is angry, that is afraid, that is dissatisfied, that is sad and indignant, and we have to take care of it. And what we have seen in this electoral campaign in the midst of all these events is a campaign of aggression, of insults from prisons, of drug trafficking, of threats from one side and from the other.
Fajardo also expressed his opinion on the confrontations and tensions between the presidential candidates during the electoral campaign.
In all this confrontation that we're seeing, in all this atmosphere that has been taking place in the elections, and that this week is critical, the tension is increasing, the grievances are increasing, and this Colombia that we are seeing is not a Colombia that we want. If, for any reason, either of the two positions that are here with me win the elections, Colombia would be a powder room, and the atmosphere that has been generated of insults and aggressions could become a hecatomb for us here in Colombia. And that is why I am talking about a different policy, a policy that has to be based on elementary principles of decency and principles.
We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. And welcome back. The Russian Minister of Defense assured that the objectives of the operation in Ukraine will be met despite the sanctions and the West's support to Kyiv. The Minister of Defense of Russia, Sergei Shoigu, stated Tuesday that the West rushed to supply arms to Ukraine, fearing a possible defeat from Kyiv. The high official added that the number of foreign mercenaries in Ukraine has exceeded 6,000 people, while advisors and members of private military companies are headed toward the country. Likewise, Shoigu denounced during a meeting of defense ministers of the Collective Security Treaty Organization that the West denies various acts of torture and execution of Russian soldiers who fell in the hands of Kyiv's forces as prisoners of war. Today, it's been 3 months since the beginning of Russia's military operation in Ukraine. This morning, Russia's Foreign Affairs Minister Sergei Lavrov said United Nations Human Rights Council has lost all credibility in the conflict. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry reports that in the last 24 hours, its troops have destroyed 680 military targets, among them a warehouse of shells for U.S. howitzers. Major General Igor Konashenkov said that the missile battery and the Russian artillery also hit 73 command posts and 578 areas, which include Ukrainian military manpower and equipment, as well as 37 artillery and mortar units in firing positions. Konashenkov said more than 177 aircraft and 990 drones and 3,226 tanks and armored vehicles of the Ukrainian army were destroyed by Russian troops. The Russian government announced on Tuesday that all Greek importers of Russian gas will start paying the Gazprom company in rubles. Authorities of the three main companies in charge of fuel purchase in Greece, such as Depa Commerce, Mytilineos, and Prometheus Gas, stated that they will make their payments in rubles to avoid an interruption of supplies. According to experts, it will not be possible to replace Russian gas with any other source in the next few years, and in case of default on the payment for the Russian supply, Greek authorities would be forced to cut electricity due to the country's lack of capacity. Meanwhile, the governments of Germany and Italy have authorized their companies to open up ruble accounts to pay for Russian gas, while Berlin is considering the possibility of adopting the same initiative. On Tuesday, the burial ceremony for Iranian Colonel Hassan Sayyad Jajai, member of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, was held with a mass popular demonstration in the capital, Tehran. The high-ranking government officials present at the ceremony vowed to avenge the murder of the colonel, killed last Sunday with 5 shots in his vehicle outside his home in the eastern part of the capital. Those present at the funeral also expressed their condemnation of the assassination, chanting the slogan, "Death to the United States." The identity of the two perpetrators is still unknown. At least 6 farmers were murdered by the terrorist group Daesh in Iraq. The insurgents took advantage of the fierce weather conditions of the village of Sami al-Azi in the Taza district south of the Kirkuk governorate. The assailants carried out the incursion during the epigee of a sandstorm that, since Monday, covered several areas of the Middle East and Syria, Iran, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. According to the reports, Daesh members effected the killings when the victims were collecting a wheat harvest. The Islamic State agents also burned part of the crops, 1 harvesting machine, and 3 vehicles. A similar situation transpired in the Diyala governorate, where 2 civilians died in a mortar attack staged by the same terrorist group. The Palestinian Authority submitted a report and an extensive file to the International Criminal Court concerning the crimes committed by Israel against the Palestinian people, with a special note on the murder of Al Jazeera journalist Shirin Abu Akleh. The Foreign Affairs Ministry of the nation assured it requested the ICC to take the report into consideration to speed up the investigations and take the perpetrators and murderers to international justice. The Palestinian Foreign Affairs Chief Riyad al-Maliki, on the note of these news, reaffirmed that the fate of the Al Jazeera correspondent is a crime, which is why the authorities demanded that the circumstances surrounding the assassination be looked into thoroughly. The International Criminal Court has been studying since March 2021 a series of possible war crimes carried out by the Israeli government against the Palestinian people. China's State Councilor and Minister of Foreign Affairs Wang Yi held a meeting with Michelle Bachelet, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, who arrived in the Asian nation on May 23rd for a visit that will last 6 days, including a trip to the Xinjiang region. During the meeting held in Guangzhou, in the south of the country, the head of the Chinese diplomacy reiterated the desire of the national government outlined in the words of President Xi Jinping on the general objective of a better life for its citizens. The diplomat also reaffirmed to the High Commissioner that the development of human rights in China is guided by 5 fundamental principles: the priority of protecting the right to life, the promotion of the right to fundamental development, the protection of legitimate citizens' rights, the protection of the rights of minorities, and the protection of the security of its citizens as a long-term objective. This is the first time in nearly 2 decades that a United Nations Human Rights Envoy authority has visited China. With that, we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSUR English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Diego Martin. Thank you for watching.